Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior, respected professional from the Indian Army, now an author from Mumbai, India, Lt Col Navinder Narang. Navinder, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, sir. It's an honor to be on your show, sir.
Thank you. Navinder is an author, a strategist, and a corporate leader. And his book, and all of you know I'm very partial to authors. His latest book is a book titled Bring Your Own Shark. So, Navinder, let me ask you before we come to your book, you've transitioned from the Indian Army to the corporate world and now to being an author. What motivated each of these phases in your life?
Sir, in fact, when I started my army career, it got me into a very, very different mold of understanding the whole structure and going about responsibilities given to you and challenges given to you. And each challenge at each level used to bring me a developed model for the next kind of responsibility. So it was a wonderful tenure of 21 years, which I think every youth aspires for, and I did my share. As we went along, I realized towards the fag end of my career that the kind of challenges which I now yearned for were perhaps dormant in the uniform. Somewhere I always aspired to look out of the the boundaries which were established and try and seek higher challenges. To that extent, I made up my mind. It was a difficult decision to leave the army, but having said so, the last tenure of Army Group Insurance Fund, I think that prepared me a lot, gave me an exposure in the army, outside the army, and then I could fathom my initial thought processes, how to figure it out. And doing an MDI course on management helped me further. Now, having transitioned out of the army, this was a part which I was not prepared for. So somewhere while in the army, you see the glamour of outside, you see the brands, and you see the international brands, and you see the Economic Times and read them, and you become a bit overawed by the things outside. But when you go outside and you join an organization, well, that's a different scenario. And you feel that there are myriad of challenges which you hadn't thought of earlier. And in the myriad of challenges, you do not know which one to take on.
Correct.
So you can easily get disillusioned or demotivated if you don't figure them out well. Fortunately for me, having been in the infantry, I was able to think how to deal with it effectively by going back to my company commander's years. So being a zonal head, I used to keep a laptop bag on my back and go around familiarizing with my terrain, the new terrain in the corporate. That helped me a lot. And as I figured out further things, I saw a lot of middle-aged professionals especially, and also those transitioning from the forces, going through a lot of dilemmas and a lot of challenges of figuring out what to do. And then I felt there was a need to, make them understand through my experiences and whatever learnings I had, how to bring growth to your life and not wait for it to happen to you. So that was an interesting thing. And I always had it in my mind to write a book like that. Fortunately, it happened at the right time.
Amazing. And how did your time in counterinsurgency operations and border deployment shape your approach to leadership and resilience?
Yeah, that's a nice one. In fact, both these tenures of counterinsurgency operations and border deployment give various different facets of leadership and resilience, as you put it. Coming to the counterinsurgency operations, it gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of initiative to do things which you plan for beyond the obvious. Because here's a kind of a field that you can think of doing something out of the ordinary, which can impact the population, which can influence the ones who probably harbor terrorists, harbor insurgents, and also counter those.
Mm.
So in that, you learn how to deal with the population, you to connect with them. And
Mm.
also you have to motivate your troops in command differently. You have to keep persisting, keep preparing, and wait for the right day to come.
Mm.
But when the right day comes, you don't have time at that time. So
Correct.
whatever preparation you've done, you
Mm.
got to take instantaneous decisions and take them with full responsibility.
Mm.
Now coming to the other part of border deployment, it appears to be more of a routine thing.
Mhm.
But let me tell you, from what we have seen recently, border deployment and preparation done effectively
Mm.
prepares you for that D-Day
Mm.
when it comes.
Absolutely.
And when it comes, you are with all your guns blazing because you are prepared. You're better prepared than the
Correct.
adversary.
Correct.
And that's what counts as a leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, uh, having grown up in an army environment, I can certainly say that nothing in the army is absolutely routine. As you said, border is an amazing challenge that all of you have faced and you continue to face. Thank you. So, Navinder, let's now talk about your book, Bring Your Own Shark. And before I ask you a question, I'll ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Navinder Narang's book, Bring Your Own Shark. I have a copy signed by Navinder. It's a beautiful, great book. Strongly recommend you read it. My first question for you is what inspired the unique metaphor of sharks in your book? And how did the Japanese tale about sharks and fish tanks influence your concept?
Sir, when I look back at the years which I spent in the army and the ones which I spent in corporate, and also seeing other colleagues and other managers working,
Hmm.
I realized that people look for guidance, but at the same time they don't want to be judged.
Hmm.
Well, everybody has got their own realities, own
Correct.
circumstances, and their own ways of dealing with them. And if you judge them, that's the first way to kill their spirit, because then the growth, the motivation slows down. People feel challenged, people feel demotivated.
Hmm.
So here was something which I wanted to do. I was wanted to use some kind of a metaphor.
Hmm.
And incidentally, I came across this Japanese fish tank story. Amazing story. How just inserting a shark in a fish tank enlivens the fishes, makes them active, makes them, more responsive.
Hmm.
And this was an example which I thought was apt to show
Hmm.
that if an external fear could motivate somebody like that, how about getting those fears to deal with you differently?
Right.
I mean to say, when you take something as fear, it will be temporary.
Hmm.
Now, imagine taking the same shark out of the tank. The fish will again go
Hmm.
slaggard.
Correct.
So at that time, when you think about this in real life,
Hmm.
you know that there's something required which always eggs you on internally.
Hmm.
And that is something which you need to bring in yourself.
Hmm.
Now imagine if you have the same motivation, which which acts like a driving force.
Yeah.
That driving force will ultimately catapult you and take you to the direction which you probably only dreaming of and yearning for.
Hmm.
And it does so. I won't say effortlessly, but it does so in a very sure manner. And to do that, you learn the different attributes it takes, and the maturity develops because of that. So
Hmm.
that was something
Great
which
response.
I wanted to
Yeah.
do, and I was happy to do it.
Great response. And how did your first-hand encounter with shark fins in the Nicobar Islands leave a lasting impact on your worldview and eventually your own writing this book?
Oh yes, that happened long, long time back ago. It was in 1993, if I'm not wrong, and I was on a sanitization trip with the Navy to the islands, and a remote, uninhabited island. I saw a boat on the beach, and we decided to go there in a dinghy and check out what it is. And lo and behold, when I saw the boat, there were two baskets full of shark fins.
Oh God.
The first time I saw that, and let me tell you, I'll be frankly telling you that I was numb. I
Hmm.
did not know what to. what to think about.
Mm.
But as I recounted that episode, because that vision and that image was very, very fresh in my mind for
Mm.
years.
Mm.
So I tried to think that maybe it's the human nature that if you fear something and
Mm.
you cannot do anything about it, it's
Mm.
better to annihilate it, to
Right.
cut it out.
Correct.
That way you are trying to reduce that fear. But actually, the fear doesn't go away.
Mm.
Despite knowing that there are 10 million sharks killed every year,
Mm.
the population is still there.
Yeah.
And these sharks are, I later learned, they are the apex predators of the ocean.
Correct.
And they are the oldest, probably, living beings on this planet because they've been even older than dinosaurs,
Mm.
400 million years ago.
Mm.
If they can survive through all this chaos,
Mm.
I think that's a lot to be learned.
Absolutely.
And those fins gave me that further impetus to, drive further deep and dive down deeper
Mm.
and find out what's this whole thing about. And I think I found a wonderful analogy to play with.
Very interesting. You've also spoken of several species of sharks in your book. Can you, for my viewers and listeners, share a couple of examples of how these relate to the corporate world?
Oh, yes. Actually, there are 500 species plus,
Mm.
but in my book, I have touched about nine, which are predominantly, exhibiting these behaviors, which
Mm.
help us grow.
Mm.
And out of these, I think I would recount two are the main ones. That is the mako shark, which is the first chapter in my book, and the black tip shark. Now, the mako shark is the fastest shark in the
Mm.
ocean.
Mm.
It swims at the speed of 60 kilometers per hour,
Okay.
and it doesn't budge to take a decision when the time comes.
Mm.
It's spontaneous. I think somewhere we need to learn this in the corporate that time is of essence, and also the decision taking has to be at the right time.
Mm.
Any delay in decision can mean heavy costs in the corporate. That was one thing which I would like to tell. And second part, that the black tip shark. Now it owns its space.
Mm.
It is very, very, it takes accountability in a very, very right manner.
Right.
And it doesn't shy away when there are other creatures around.
Mm.
So similarly, I think in the corporate especially, this aspect of accountability and ownership
Mm.
needs to be driven more better,
Mm.
because somewhere we shy of accountability, and we shy of taking ownership,
Mm.
thinking that maybe somebody else can do this job, or maybe we need to delegate it further. But
Mm.
there are certain things a leader cannot delegate. He
Mm.
has to take ownership. Even if they're done by somebody else, the responsibility is his.
Amazing. You also speak about the great white shark. And the great white shark really stands for fearless leadership. What, according to you, is the difference between fearlessness and recklessness from a corporate perspective?
Yes. In fact, fearlessness is something which is clarity in face of danger. And that comes through competence,
Mm.
confidence, and conviction,
Okay.
the three C's.
Mm.
Whereas recklessness is something which is denial of danger.
Mm.
You are completely oblivious of the danger around you,
Mm.
and unmindful of risks involved.
Mm.
So there's a thin line between, they say, bravery and foolhardiness.
Mm.
So I think that's something which we considered. And the great white shark,
Mm.
it takes calculated risks. It takes calculated risks and also bold steps to
Mm.
ensure that its strategies, whatever aspects of planning are there, are taken into consideration. And then it comes with full force. The
Mm.
power is there to see, and that force is then, and I think, an indomitable force.
Mm. Very interesting. And yet, at the end of your book, you bring in the dolphin, which is the non shark, and that represents empathy. Why is emotional intelligence so essential for in the corporate world for modern leadership?
Well, I'll take that from some cues from my own learning in life.
Mhm.
Being an infantry officer and always being in the forefront, I naturally developed that aggression and that kind of behavior, which is always leading you into operations and definitely giving a lot of successes.
Mm.
But somewhere I realized that there was a lacking of that emotional connect.
Mm.
And even when I started writing this book, having covered some of the shark chapters,
Mm.
I realized that I'm losing out on something which is more substantial, something which is even more greater, yet softer.
Mm.
And that was the spirit of connection, the spirit of creating trust through
Mm.
empathy.
Mm.
And that I feel today in these complex times, especially after COVID,
Mm.
it is so essential in every leader. You
Mm.
just cannot get work done just by charging through, or just by showing your aggression, or just by bulldozing things away. You have to be empathetic to various things, and
Correct.
every day you see instances of this happening. And
Mm.
any leader who is able to do this is having that plus factor as
Mm.
against people who are not able to do this.
Great response. And Navinda, how do you recommend readers identify their current shark? The growth challenge most relevant to them at a particular phase, because I'm sure all of us, as we progress in our careers, the shark in us must be changing.
Yes. In fact, the readers should dwell in them. In fact, anybody should dwell in them as to what's holding them back.
Mm.
What are the things which are, pressing them down? What are the fears? What they think they should do, but they're not able to do. They're not either able to voice it out,
Mm.
or they feel that they're not enabled,
Mm.
or they feel that it'll be impossible for them to do.
Mm.
So those are the things that they need to carefully figure out, and then understand what behavior they need to adapt to, they need to evolve, they need to use that, transform themselves to handle that challenge.
Mm.
See,
Great.
as a person, I'm naturally aggressive. I'm naturally a mako shark, if you
Mm.
see.
Mm.
But always I cannot be a mako shark.
Correct.
There are some instances in life where I have to be, you can say, perhaps a nurse shark.
Mm.
I have to take things calmly.
Mm.
Or I have to be a whale shark.
Mm.
I have to be persistent yet consistent.
Mm.
So these are the things which you have to evolve yourself into and understand how they will shape up better.
Mm. And was there any shark type that challenged you the most when you were writing your book?
Yes, I think not the shark type, but the dolphin, yes.
Okay.
Because as I told you, I'm not naturally a dolphin person.
Mm.
And let me tell you very frankly, writing this chapter has evolved me in a way.
Mm.
I find myself more on the listening path these days than I was before writing this book.
Mm.
So I think somewhere the connection, the empathy, and the layers that of maturity that you need to create in yourself
Mm.
comes through experiencing this chapter of the dolphin shark, and it plays a big role in creating that kind of an emotional value into you, and that's what I think every leader must aspire to.
Fascinating. You also reference leadership, sustainability, and emotional growth in your book. How do you converge in today's rapidly evolving workplaces?
Very interesting question, sir. In fact, I would like to disclose that
Mm.
I'm also a sustainability expert, an ESG head in my company,
Mm.
and also a digitalization enthusiast.
Mhm.
So, having done this, I understand all these three aspects of leadership, of sustainability, and of purpose.
Mm.
So, what I would say is uh, these all three things, there is growth, emotional growth, sustainability, and leadership, they converge to one point, which is
Mm.
intentionality. Now, what is intentionality? Intentionality is something which doesn't stop at the question of what's in it for me, or
Mm.
what is the outcome of this going to be, but
Mm.
also goes on to say what should you do to make this last longer,
Mm.
or what you should do to make the outcome applicable for a larger piece of larger team or larger
Yeah.
people. So
Mm.
to that extent, I think the intentionality part is very, very important,
Mm.
and it helps to understand how to make leadership into a legacy,
Mm.
how to convert sustainability into systemic force, and how to convert emotional growth
Mm.
into wisdom.
Mm. Very interesting. You also talk about the need to invite challenges rather than wait for external pressure. What tools or mindset shifts support this approach?
Yes. So the first mindset shift is stop seeing fear as impediment,
Hmm.
or stop getting, afraid of fear.
Hmm.
Fear is to be used as a fuel for growth. Moment you understand the reason behind that fear, you can easily adapt yourself to welcome that challenge into your tank, so-called tank.
Hmm.
And also, along with this, you need to see what's holding you back, what's not allowing you to go ahead, and understand it deeply, and probably do a journaling on that.
Hmm.
And even while reading this book, readers will appreciate that we have reflective prompts in between. So
Hmm.
these reflective prompts egg you to start taking action.
Hmm.
And also at each chapter end, we have a takeaway, which is an easy takeaway for people to remember. And we have towards the end also a full summary of all the sharks and the dolphin. So it's easy to relate, and readers will be able to find value out of this.
Very interesting. I have time for two more questions. Your book bridges both personal and professional growth. Why is it important to address both simultaneously?
Yes, sir. So I think professional and personal growth are intertwined. You may be claiming to be a different person in an office,
Hmm.
but at times of vulnerabilities and at times of pressure,
Hmm.
the real you does come out. And that real you is something which you keep for your near dear ones or your friends. And somewhere that behavior also catches up.
Hmm.
So, to an extent, I would say you need to develop both sides of your personality so that you're able to bring or you're able to bridge that kind of gap which exists in not allowing people to know the real you.
Hmm.
Because the moment you are expressing yourself as a real individual, as somebody who's in flesh and blood, and who means what he says, and he says what he means, the response and the receptivity in everybody around you will be much better.
Very interesting. And my last question, Navinder, what is the one thing you would like the readers to take away from your book, Bring Your Own Shark?
Yes. So, the book, which is available on Amazon, is also a wonderful read to understand that growth is not something that's going to come and knock at your door.
Hmm.
You got to know what's stopping you and invite that challenge inside your domain
Hmm.
and take steps to reach the level where you can override that kind of factors
Hmm.
and bring growth into your life.
Hmm.
So that's one thing, that don't wait for growth to happen, bring it in
Hmm.
and dive deep and read my book. Thank
Very
you
nice.
so much.
Thank you. And on that note, Navinder, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me. It's been a fascinating conversation. All of us have seen a shark, have heard of a shark, but my conversation with you brings out so many different aspects and so many different lessons that we as corporate leaders can learn and take away from sharks. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.